Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, jam-packed show for you today. Look, the last time you and I spoke, the last time the Kuhner man was on the air was Thursday morning, just, a day before July 4th, Independence Day, and so much has happened now in the last 3.5 days. And what I really was hoping to lead with was the historic passage of the big, beautiful bill. The Republicans delivered in the House. Trump signed it into law on Friday, actually 5 p.m. at the White House. It is now his signature legislative achievement. And I am going to discuss it because it now has profound ramifications for him, his presidency, but more importantly for the country. And frankly, this was going to be a festive Monday, kind of a party Monday, because what's in the bill and how the Republicans were able to coalesce together and against immense odds get it passed is truly a remarkable achievement. But then tragedy struck. And it struck on two levels. One was the actual tragedy itself, which is the almost biblical, really, seriously, biblical flash floods that have now devastated Central Texas. But then even more. And I don't know, the first one we can somehow take care of. The second one, this is a cancer. This is a cancer, my friends, I'm telling you, on our country. And I really, honestly, at this point, don't know how we can stop it or how we can resolve it. We can try to contain it, like cancer. We can try to excise it. We can try to apply radioactive chemotherapy. But this is a cancer, make no mistake about it. And that is the disgusting, sickening, revolting, honestly, practically diabolical response of the Democrats to what has been happening in Texas over the last 3.5 days. It is, as one person at Red State put it, Democrats are now becoming evil ghouls. Ghouls for what they're saying about Trump and what they're saying now about what befell the people of Texas. So, my friends, this is now what has happened. It has been absolutely heartbreaking. There is no other word to use. Beginning early Friday morning, late Thursday evening, early Friday morning, in the area of Kerrville, Texas, which is basically in Central Texas, people, like all across the country, hell, I was doing the same thing, getting ready with their families, with their children, to celebrate the 4th of July weekend. And so in that part of Texas, and it's a beautiful part of Texas, a lot of people own, summer cabins, a second home, a small little cottage. Nearby is Guadalupe River, which is known for some phenomenal kayaking, fishing, camping, outdoors. And so families, parents, children, Thursday night packed that area in Central Texas near Guadalupe River. There is also a private summer camp, a Christian summer camp, an all-girls camp right nearby called Camp Mystic. There were some flash flood warnings late Thursday afternoon into early Thursday evening. However, it was not predicted to be in that specific area. Now, this is very important because the left is, again, lying and politicizing about this. So, there were flood warnings, flash floods, but not for Kerrville, not for that particular area. They thought they were going to be spared the worst of it. In other words, they're going to get some bad thunderstorms. It's going to be a little wet, a little soggy, a little bit rainy. But hey, it'll pass, and they'll still have a nice, beautiful weekend with the kids and the family. But then that massive storm suddenly stalled right there around that Careville area, right near Guadalupe River. It didn't move. Forecasters thought it would just keep moving. It didn't move. Weather's unpredictable. You think it's going to move, and then it just stops. In this case, it stalled. And then it was like the heavens opened up. It's something out of Noah's Ark. I'm not kidding. They began to hear by 1 o'clock in the morning, the only words they keep saying over and over again, pounding rain. Rain fell so hard, they thought it was like bolts of lightning or rocks or debris falling upon their cabins or upon their homes. Massive thunder and lightning. By 3:30 in the morning, we're now into Friday morning, from Thursday into Friday, residents began to see water from the Guadalupe River going up 30 feet, 35 feet, 40 feet. Their cabins, they began to see water seeping into their cabins. Now, what is remarkable about this is that many of the cabins, many of the homes are uphill, not downhill, uphill. That's why they were so shocked and taken aback. The water was coming in so strong. The flooding was so strong. The current was so strong. It literally went up a hill. It was going up hills. They began to hear cabins literally being ripped from their foundations, and the people in them being carried away to their certain death. Homes were smashed and swept away. Cars physically swept away. Entire trees swept away. Bodies swept away. The most heartbreaking of all, and this is the one that I got to tell you I've been thinking about all weekend. It has bothered me and Grace so much you have no idea. I can now barely look at the images. I have a hard time even reading the stories. And if you sense emotion in my voice, I apologize. Because I think of my two kids. Ava is 12, Ashton is 15. Those are literally the ages, in fact, many of them are even younger, who are now either confirmed dead or many are missing and presumed dead. It hit Camp Mystic. Dozens of children, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. This is summer camp. This is supposed to be one of the happiest moments in their life. One of the happiest times in their lives are now gone. Counselors, gone. Coaches and their wives, gone. So far, 81 people are dead, confirmed dead, but hundreds more are missing. Now, by the grace of God, through unbelievable acts of heroism and courage, and there's one in particular, it is just, I'm going to talk about it a bit later. It is a father who went on a kayak and he managed to rescue 3 families, but he couldn't save his 2 young daughters. The Harbor family. Brooke, age 13, and the other, Blair, the age 11. Dead. He lost his parents as well, the kids' grandparents. He and his wife were in one cabin. Their children and their parents, the grandparents with their grandkids, were in a separate cabin. He and his wife managed to survive. His 2 young daughters and his father and mother didn't. They were swept away. And yet, as he desperately tried to save people, he saved 3 families, but he wasn't able to save his 2 young girls. And of course, his mother and his dad. And these are the kinds of stories that we're seeing now all over Central Texas. There have been heroic rescue and recovery operations taking place, local, state, federal. President Trump is monitoring the situation extremely closely. He has now signed he has declared that whole Caravelle area a major disaster zone. Massive federal funding and resources are now being directed. The full weight of the federal government is now bearing down on that region. They have rescued about 165, almost 170 lives. But there are still many dead and many more missing. There are at least 14 more children from Camp Mystic still missing. And people are now hoping against hope that they can find at least one or two survivors. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, so you have these historic floods, flash flooding in central Texas. The bodies are not even cold yet. You've got 81, I think it's now 82 confirmed dead, many adults, about almost 60 of them adults, 23 of them children. Dozens more children missing, dozens more adults missing. Desperate search and rescue operations. Homes swept away, cabins swept away. Cars, branches, trees, you name it. Okay, it looks like Noah's Ark. It is the basin of the Guadalupe River literally overflowed. You've got entire communities wiped out. Texas is hurting. Texas is crying. And listen now to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying that the scale of this flash flooding has now forced a response from the federal government. They have now declared that whole area a disaster zone, a major disaster zone, and they are sending in massive federal aid and federal resources. Roll cut 20, Mike.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and I want to thank Governor Abbott for his leadership, and know that President Trump is absolutely heartbroken by what has happened here in Texas, and the loss of life is absolutely devastating to him and Melania. This morning I talked with him several times, and he wanted to make sure that all of you know how much he loves Texas, how much he's grieving for your families that have lost someone, and the beautiful children that we're still looking for and hoping to return to their families, and that he is absolutely committed to using all the resources of the federal government to help unify families, rescue all those that are still missing, and return those who maybe we will recover back to their families as soon as possible, and that we will be here walking alongside each other and helping throughout this entire crisis.
You can see the emotion, or you can hear the emotion on her voice. Apparently the governor is also, Greg Abbott, is really heartbroken over this. Everybody that is, you've seen the pictures of the missing children, many of them missing girls, because it was an all-girls private summer camp, a Christian camp, Camp Mystic. Listen now. This is Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He goes on Fox News to give an update about these massive flash floods in Texas, and he can barely speak. You can see he starts to get choked up. The emotion just begins to overcome him. Roll cut 21. Mike.
Yeah, the Camp Mystic is kind of split into two sections, and the one section where the younger children were is where most of those missing persons came from in that area. I've got 8 grandkids. I've been up all night. I've been up 2 nights actually. I couldn't sleep last night. The heartbreak. Governor Abbott and I were there to about, I guess, I don't know, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I can't remember. But we were there, and it's unspeakable. It's just, there's no words that you can have for someone who loses a child. And, you know, we've had our disasters in Texas, and we've had our times of loss in Texas, and major disasters. But the focus on the children here has been, I think, what touches everyone's heart. And it just makes you want to hug every parent, but you don't have words to say. This is where you have to rely on the Word of God. You have to stand on the foundation of your faith.
I agree. No, I completely agree. Not like this. And he's right. They were essentially two compounds, however you want to call it. They were split up. You know how summer camps are. You have some older kids and you have younger kids. And it was the younger kids, those 7, 8, 9 years old, that were closer to the basin of the Guadalupe River. Now, they're starting to find some of these kids, obviously dead, 12 miles away from where the camp was. 12 miles away. That's how powerful the current and the flash flooding was. Okay? Now, in the midst of all of this, and this is now I'm sorry, but this is now the second tragedy. First, people were stunned. By Saturday, as the country came to grips over the depth of the tragedy, the depth of the loss, the depth of the suffering, with parents openly weeping, and law enforcement and political officials and you name it, even reporters overcome with emotion at the sight of the bodies that they were discovering everywhere. Millions, and I mean literally millions, of liberals and Democrats began to take to X, to social media, and they began to blame Donald Trump for what happened in Texas. That Trump was to blame. Why was Trump to blame? Well, it started with Texas deserves this. One after another after another. That because Texas voted for Donald Trump, because Texas voted for a conservative Republican like Greg Abbott, because Texas is a red state, and in many ways the cradle of the MAGA Republican majority, that they deserved to be smacked down by nature, by God if you believe in God. And that, as they said, karma was a bee. What comes around goes around. And so literally it was post after post after post. I'm not crying, I'm laughing. I'm not crying, I'm celebrating. Woo-hoo, I hope more kids die. Woo-hoo, I hope more Texans die. They deserve it. They voted for Trump. This is what you get. Then they began to attack Trump and blame him. Listen to this, not climate change. No, not climate change. For the first time, they didn't touch climate change. They then smeared him, saying it was the Doge cuts because they had cut the staff at the National Weather Service. That then warnings that were supposed to have been given earlier were not. And by not giving out these warnings earlier because of these supposed staff cuts at the National Weather Service, Trump now had the blood of dead children on his hands. And this is now what the lying fake news media has been running with for the last 48 hours. The bodies aren't even cold. Okay, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is not 100. He's 1,000% correct. What you're seeing now, the devastation, the flash floods, the loss of life, especially all of the very young children, it's unspeakable. But the reaction from so many liberals, so many Democrats, honestly, in many ways, is just as unspeakable. It is evil. There's no other word. It's evil. I'm sorry. So millions of them took to social media, literally dancing on the graves of these dead kids, saying that Texas deserved it for having voted for Trump, having voted for Governor Greg Abbott. But then they began to find the culprit in particular, and that was the evil orange man. Donald Trump. And the media began to pick it up as well. And now they are attacking Trump. I've never seen anything like this. Here you have a flash flood of literally practically biblical proportions as they're still trying to rescue missing children, with parents praying, hoping, desperately clinging to any kind of hope that their loved ones can still be found or rescued. And they're trying to blame Trump for what happened. Not climate change this time. No. Now it's the bad orange man. It's the Donald. And the line of attack is, Doge, he cut the National Weather Service. There wasn't enough staff members to give them the warnings ahead of time. And so they say because of this, people weren't able to get out to avoid the floods. They weren't able to be evacuated in time. And that's why we have 82 dead, dozens more missing, including about at least 24 more children. And it's all at the feet of Donald Trump. And I could give you clip after clip. Let me just play one. Listen now. This is George Stephanopoulos yesterday on ABC This Week. Roll cut 22, Mike.
Maria, we're also learning that there were significant staffing shortfalls at the National Weather Service's offices in the region.
You know, George, as of right now, the local county officials really didn't want to address that just yet. What they are telling us is they expected between 4 and 6 inches of rain. That is what weather experts told them, the National Weather Service as well. They also knew that in remote locations, they might get anywhere from 8 to 10 inches. But this amount of rain in such a short amount of time, it was very difficult to navigate. And when the Department of Homeland Security Secretary was here just yesterday, she acknowledged this was an issue. She was going to take these concerns to the White House as well and try and see if there was anything they could do to revamp the system. She says the president is committed to it.
Maria, thanks very much.
He's a scumbag. I'm telling you, this guy's a scumbag. Man, they don't get worse than this guy. So, by the way, he got sued for libeling Trump, okay, slandering Trump as a rapist over the E. Jean Carroll civil case. And that cost ABC News $16 million. Well, you know what? Sue him again. Sue him again. And every other media outlet that claims that Trump cut the weather service, which led to these apparently children and families being killed. Because here's the fact, okay? They had extra staff at the National Weather Service in Houston, in San Antonio, all across that area in Texas. Staff wasn't cut. Staff was beefed up and boosted. They had additional staff. It's a lie. It's a disgusting lie. Now, even then, you know, they had all this extra staff and it didn't prevent it. Why? Because they were predicting flash flooding. Yes, but not in that area. Because how many times are weather people wrong? Because it's not an exact science. Because weather patterns, storms, they're volatile. It looks like they're trending in one direction. It looks like they're heading south or southeast or northwest or whatever. And then suddenly they change. The pattern changes. So they're unpredictable. And so according to them, they thought, no, Kerrville, that whole area, they may get a couple of inches, but they're not going to be pounded. But suddenly the storm system stalled, as they put it. And it just stayed, and then it just kept raining and raining and raining and raining and raining and raining. And before you know it, you had flash flooding. So what now? Trump is God? Like, instead of blaming God, you're going to blame Trump? You idiots? And then they're so desperate, and this is why. Because he passed the big, beautiful bill. He's on a roll now. Everybody can see it. The stock market, all-time high. Unemployment, 4.1%. Remember, everybody kept saying, the stock market's going to crash. The economy is going under. No, just the opposite. Now the economy is going to surge. Tax cuts are kicking in. Most of his promises from the campaign trail have now been codified into law. Huge victory on Friday. The stock market, all-time high. All-time high. Unemployment now near 4%. Inflation is now finally cooling off. You've got the big win over Iran, destroying all of their nuclear enrichment facilities. He made peace deals between Rwanda and Congo, Serbia and Kosovo, India and Pakistan. Just over the weekend, a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. NATO now, every single member outside of the socialist government in Spain, 5% of GDP, 5% now will go to military spending. Infusing NATO with an extra $1 trillion. I could go on and on and on. University of Pennsylvania, I don't know if you heard about this. They literally caved and capitulated to Trump. Leah Thomas has to give up all of the medals to Riley Gaines and others. University of Pennsylvania will not allow men, biological men, to compete in female sports. Another victory for Trump. My point being, he is on such a roll right now. It is almost unprecedented, the number of victories that he has been racking up. And so, what do these pathetic Democrats and their media collaborators, their cheap propagandists, a la Stephanopoulos, what do they have left? He cut the weather service. That's why they're dying in Texas. They added extra staff. They were not understaffed. They were almost overstaffed. Weather is unpredictable. Now, if you're looking for anyone to blame politically, it's been over 10 years, a decade, that people in that whole area in central Texas said, we need a better warning system, a better siren system, in case, because they've had a history of flash floods, to warn people, give them more advance time. But that was bogged down by local paralysis, local incompetence, local and state officials. That has nothing to do with Donald Trump. But this is not stopping the left. And I want to ask you, really, how evil and depraved, how sick do you have to be? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I just want to play one more cut. I promised, and I want to go to the blazing phone lines. 617-266-6868. It's not just Democrats. It's not just liberals that are blaming Trump for the flash flooding in Texas, and many of them in a very sick, twisted, perverse way, cheering on what happened, saying that Texas deserves it, these children deserve it, everyone there deserves it, because Texas dares to be a red state and dared to vote for Trump in 2024. Hollywood celebrities are now also jumping on the bandwagon, blaming Trump for what is happening now in Texas. Listen, just to give you an example. She's in exile. She left the country. She's so disgusted with the country now that Trump is president. Rosie O'Donnell, who's now in Ireland, who I have to say, on this latest video that she's released, don't quote me, I think she's 62 or 63, whatever. She's in her early 60s, I believe. I'm telling you, she looks 85, 90. This anti-Trump hatred, it's eating her up. I'm telling you, it's really wearing her down. Anyway, here she is. Listen to it in your own words. in her own words. Forgive me. Listen to it in her own words. And this is just an example of what you're seeing on social media, what you're seeing among many Democrats, and what you're seeing in Hollywood. Roll cut 25, Mike.
What a horror story in Texas. The flash floods in Texas, the Guadalupe River, 51 missing, 51 dead, more missing, children at a camp. And when the president guts all of the early warning systems and the weathering forecast abilities of the government, these are the results that we're going to start to see on a daily basis, because he's put this country in so much danger by his horrible, horrible decisions and this ridiculously immoral bill that he just signed into law. As Republicans cheered, people will die as a result, and they've started already. Shame on him. Shame on every GOP sycophant who's listening and following the disastrous decisions of this mentally incapacitated POTUS. Hard to believe.
This is the same woman that cheered on Biden. Mentally incapacitated. Okay, yeah, whatever you say, Rose. Have another, okay? Go ahead. Have another. So again, and now they're just pushing this. It doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter now. Now they're running wild with it on social media. The media is just mindlessly parroting. He cut the early warning system. He made cuts to the weather service. That's why these kids are dying. Now they're even claiming it's the big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill passed on Friday. Well, it passed on Thursday, was signed into law on Friday at 5 o'clock Eastern. 7 hours later in Texas, the torrential rains began to fall. So you're going to tell me that the big beautiful bill within 7 hours laid off so many people that by 7 hours later, I'm sorry, either you laugh or you cry. Laid off so many people that there was no warning system. There was nothing. She's mentally ill. That's what I mean. This is Trump derangement syndrome to such an extent and such a degree that is so disconnected from reality that this woman really needs mental help. She's a mentally ill woman, like so many of these liberals and Democrats. This is what happens when you are consumed with hatred. This is what happens to you. It eats away at your soul. It eats away at your brain. It eats away at your ability to reason, to even view reality. It distorts your whole view of the world. And the fact that they had more staff, additional staff, that there were all kinds of flood watch warnings given, that doesn't matter. The truth no longer matters. Now it's blame Trump. 617-266-6868 is the number. To me, I can't think of anything more revolting, more stomach-turning, honestly more immoral, more diabolical than to politicize the deaths of young children, to lie about the deaths of young children, and to do this even while some of them may be alive, desperately hoping, desperately clinging to life and that someone will rescue them. To me, that's the second tragedy here. The first is obviously the disaster itself, but the second is this simple, sickening, evil response by the left to the tragedy in Texas. And so, my question to you, 617-266-6868. What do you make of the disastrous flash floods in Texas? What do you make of the fact that so many of the victims are children? And what do you make, above all, that the media and the Democrats are lying, propagandizing, deliberately politicizing what has happened in Texas and trying to blame Trump? Will it work? And have they finally crossed the line? when you start politicizing the dead bodies of 7, 8-year-old kids. My God, can you get any lower? 617-266-6868. Lines are on fire. Let's go to Bob in the great state of Montana. You're going to kick us off, Bob. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. This is Rob. The guy.
Rob, my bad. I'm sorry. I had Bob on the board. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
I'm only going to be able to make it through this a little bit as the father of one daughter. I want to say to those of you liberals, commies, who are celebrating this and twisting this to your own advantage. You know, the God you don't believe in is watching. The God you don't believe in will hold you accountable. For you to exploit this horror for your own advantage is beyond obscene. It's beyond disgusting. You will be held accountable. And if that doesn't concern you, and if that doesn't scare you, you deserve to go to where I know you're going. And I'm sorry, Jeff, I can't stay for a follow-up.
It's so enraging. It's so infuriating. I'm with you. I couldn't believe it. Look, you have a lot of nuts in this country. That's fine. And, social media, they flock to social media. I get that. Okay. These haters that listen to this show, they just stick to you like a cheap suit. Every day with their hate. I get it. But we're not talking about 5 here, 10 there, 20 here. These are millions and millions and millions and millions. And when you start celebrating the deaths of innocent young children, again, many of them girls, you're a sick puppy. Like, really, you're a sick puppy. Like, I'm sorry, where is your soul? Where's your basic humanity? 617-266. And by the way, Trump is the monster? Look at you. That's why I always tell Bill and Sudbury, look at yourself in the mirror. Maybe one day you're going to wake up and say, I don't like what I see. I don't like what I see. I'm going to change. Or I say this to Frank in Gloucester or the other commie, Chris in Gloucester. Commie Chris, as I call him. Maybe you should see people as people instead of through an ideological lens. These were God's children. We're all God's children, but these were God's children that were taken away from their parents, from their siblings, from their grandparents, way too soon. Way too soon. And that you're celebrating their deaths, saying they deserve it because the state they live in voted for Donald Trump? My God. Seriously, my God. 617-266-6868. Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, what's up, buddy? How was your 4th of July?
Very good. I mean, outside of this, obviously, but I'm very restful, had a wonderful cookout on the 4th, spent time with the kids, my wife, the family. Honestly, I had a very nice 4th of July. Thank you for asking, Dave. I truly appreciate it. My friend, I got to ask you, I know you're a God-fearing man. I know you're a good man. What do you make of what happened in Texas and how the media and the liberals are trying to blame Trump? What say you?
Well, it's something that happened, Jeff. It's something that could have been prevented. I'm surprised they didn't blame global warming, Jeff. They believe in blaming inanimate objects for stupid stuff. But, Jeff, I just want to keep the people in Texas in my prayers. And I want to thank God for giving me the fireworks to remove groundhog that was digging under my property in Pittsburgh. So I used fireworks. I didn't harm him. I used one of those mortars. Unlike Massachusetts, we can use fireworks here to celebrate. And put it this way, I think he ran across the street pretty fast, Jeff.
So you got that nuisance out of your house, huh?
I sure did, buddy. I was in like Bill Murray trying to blow him up in Caddyshack. But anyways, Jeff, I want to praise President Trump and the conservatives that passed this bill. It needed to be passed. Now, Jeff, what needs to happen now is that they need to codify these executive orders, and then they need to codify the Doge cuts, and then we need to start paying down this debt. Rand Paul wasn't wrong for principally doing what he did. He just needed to vote for the bill so we can address the issue after this bill. Because the reconciliation in the Senate, Jeff, people that don't follow the news like you and me and understand the Constitution, the liberals believe in the Constellation.
Well, yeah, but you're right. Look, Dave, there's still a lot on President Trump's plate he's got to deal with. I agree with you. Reining in the debt, the spending, codifying the Doge cuts, and a lot of his executive orders. But I got to tell you, I've never seen a president on a roll the way he's been in the last 2 weeks. It has been one of the most consequential, impressive 2 weeks in American presidential history. And look, apparently he's going to go down to Texas this Friday. He doesn't want to go now, he said, because he doesn't want to interrupt or get in the way of the rescue and recovery operations, and he's right. But he will go down there on Friday and surveil the damage, take a look at it, and he's going to give a lot of federal help and a lot of federal relief. And honestly, all we can do at this point is pray. Pray that some of these children are saved, rescued, because I could just only imagine that could be my children. That could be your children. So, Dave, honestly, it's heartbreaking. There's just no other way to put it. It really is heartbreaking. Dave, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Russ in Bedford. Thanks for holding, Russ, and welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Russ. Go ahead. You're on the air.
This is Russ from
Russ
Boston.
in Boston. How did I get Bedford up there, Mike? Okay, my apologies. This is Russ in Boston. For whatever reason, I have Bedford. My apologies, Russ. Please, the floor is yours.
Problem. Jeff, what do you expect from the Democratic Communist Party? Communists have no moral compass, no compassion, no God in their life. Loss of life means nothing to them. All they care about is to play the filthy, rotten game of politics, and I hate the rotten game of politics. And, Jeff, I'll tell you, I could not turn on the news. I couldn't take it. I tried to make it as a patriotic day as I could, because I'll tell you, to me, there was so much to celebrate this 4th of July. It's just unbelievable list of things to celebrate. Anyways, I had friends of mine visiting from Brampton, which is a city outside of Toronto. So anyways, I set the stage. And the first thing I did was I played the Canadian national anthem as they would at a Bruins game. And then I played patriotic American songs. And I have to mention two songs that mean a lot to me, okay? The first one is Where the Stars and Stripes and the Eagle Fly, and it's by Aaron Tippin. And the other one is American Soldier by Toby Keith. Now, Jeff, this is the most fantastic video I've ever seen in my life as far as showing emotions. And I'll just give you a little brief bit about it. First of all, it starts off, him and his wife, he's a soldier. He's getting a call early in the morning that he's being deployed. And both him and his wife look at each other, and you know what's going through their mind. On the way to the base, they drive by a cemetery, and you know what's in their mind. And then the next thing you know, they embrace, okay? Then the father's getting on a transport plane, and he's leaving for war. And he has a son. I'd say maybe he was 5 years old. And the kid's brave, because you know what he told him. Son, you're now the man of the house. You got to be a man. You got to be strong. And the facial expression on these people says it all, Jeff. They don't have to say a word. It's just a facial expression. And I'll tell you with all sincerity, okay, I cannot watch this video without tears coming to my eyes, because what you see is the emotional side of a soldier going to war. And that's the part that many people don't think about, the toll on the families when a soldier goes to war.
Russ, I'm so happy that you mentioned that because Ashton loves that song. I mean, I like it too, don't get me wrong, but Ashton loves that song. And so when we did our cookout on the 4th, on Friday, he was playing music outside. We were outside enjoying the cookout. And that's one of the songs that he insisted that we listen to. And so I agree with you. I think it's a beautiful, just an absolutely beautiful, moving song. I love the video as well. And look, every 4th, I mean, I do it every day, but especially on the 4th, I really think about the men and women who fought for our country. Many of them died for our country, and how they're always willing to give their lives up for our freedoms and our liberties. And to me, these are the greatest patriots, and we should be so immensely grateful for them and for all of their heroism and sacrifice. And that's why, to me, the 4th of July, outside of Easter and outside of Christmas, to me, it's the most important holiday of the year. Honestly, I love Thanksgiving, don't get me wrong, but honestly, even more than Thanksgiving. The 4th of July, after Easter and Christmas, to me, this is what America is all about. And it's funny, Russ, you and I think alike. I saw the images on Friday, and I said, I can't. I can't. I'm going to enjoy the 4th of July, and I'll get back to the news over the weekend, and as I start to show prep, and the news just got worse and worse and worse. And, Russ, look, we're getting so immune now to what the Democrats have become that I'm telling you, even 20 years ago, this would have been considered so unacceptable that they would now openly celebrate and cheer the deaths of 7, 8, 9-year-old children, little girls from Camp Mystic, and say, you deserve it because Texas voted red, Texas voted Trump, or that the media would go on and push this blatant lie that he cut the National Weather Service, and that's why they weren't able to give these warning signs, when in fact they had additional staff. And they kept talking about flood warnings and there could be a danger of flash flooding. I mean, it shows to me, really, how depraved and evil, there's no other word, Democrats and the left have become. Nothing is out of bounds. Nothing is taboo. Everything is possible. And they will cross any line just to score a cheap political point. There are parents who've lost their kids. There are grandparents who've lost their kids. People are really, they're mourning the loss of their closest family members. And they got to hear that your child had it coming. Your child deserved to die because maybe you even voted for Kamala. Who knows the voting patterns of these people? But because your fellow citizens in Texas voted for the current president of the United States, you deserve to die. Your child deserves to die. These people are sick. Anyway, Russ, as always, thank you so much for that call. As always, and for your service. 617-266-6868. But I swear to you, according to the moonbats in this state, I'm the extremist. Me. I'm serious. Chase me out of the state. You can't make it up. Bob in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff. I'm glad
Hi,
you
Bob.
had a nice holiday.
I did. I had a wonderful weekend.
It was tainted by this news. I couldn't watch the news either after a while. It was too heartbreaking. But, this act that the Democrats are putting on, not so long ago, it would have shocked me. Now I expect it. They have nothing to go on. They're down in the dumps, these people. And for them to do this, it's beyond terrible. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't want to say this because I don't like to vilify and demonize fellow citizens. I really don't. That's more what liberals do to us. That's what Bill in Sudbury does when he calls us all Nazis and calls me a Nazi. But honestly, I'm starting to question their basic humanity. I'm looking at them and I'm like, there's something wrong with you. How can you do this? Look, to me, life is simple. There are just some lines you don't cross. And politicizing the dead bodies of children is one of them. You just don't cross that line. All right, let's go to G-Man in the great state of Vermont. Thanks for holding, G-Man, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. I heard this horrible news, and I couldn't help thinking back on things I've learned over the last several eons of my life. I went to school with a kid whose dad was a cloud seeder, an MIT guy named Wallace Howell, who used to, he did weather modification by planting particulates in the, nucleants into the upper atmosphere. And this goes back to the 60s when this was going on. And now we have these very sophisticated, extremely powerful ionospheric heaters, such as we know about HARP, but that's just one of them. And they can steer the jet stream, and they can cause, by raising or lowering the jet stream, they can steer weather below it. And this could have been I'm just speculating, but I just don't doubt it, that this was a deep state kind of act of revenge against Texas to cause a huge storm system to stop and just dump everything in one place and cause a disaster.
Well, the good news, G-Man, is, I don't know if you've seen this, this also broke over the weekend, but Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is now sponsoring a bill that would literally ban this cloud seeding that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And her bill gives a lot of details, what you're talking about, how prevalent the practice is, how it's been going on now for many, many decades, and how much money many of these corporations and companies have been making with this very destructive practice. Now, look, G-Man, I can't say, I don't know what caused, this flash flood in particular. There have been flash floods in that area before. Apparently in 1987, there was a very bad flash flood. Didn't kill as many people, but it still killed a lot of people, including young children. So that area does occasionally get flash floods over its history. The Guadalupe River is a bit of a volatile river. The basin can overflow. What I'm just going by what I was, what I'm seeing in terms of the reportage. They were predicting flash flooding. They said there was going to be a lot of flooding, but not in Kerrville, not in that where the Camp Mystic is and where so much of the damage was done. All of the meteorologists were predicting that the storm is going to go over that area and keep moving. So yeah, you would get a lot of rain, yes, some thunder, some lightning, no question. But, it wouldn't be a flood. It certainly wouldn't be a flash flood. For whatever reason, it stopped. It just stopped. And as you put it, just dumped all this rain within about a 2 to 3 hour period. And I don't want to repeat my opening monologue, but what stunned the residents and the campers there, or people who had a cabin or, a second cottage or a summer cabin, was the water came up so quickly and up a hill. And it just started to carry cars and trees and debris. And then cabins began to literally get ripped off their foundations. And, I go back to this father, A.J. Harber is his name, Harber, 45 years old. He's a professional, middle-class man. And 5 years ago, they bought a cabin right in that area. And he's got two beautiful girls, Blair and Brooke, 13 and 11, and his wife, Annie. and he's got two parents. And so the parents bought a cabin just, 50 yards away from where A.J. Harbor had his. And they often went in the summer, in the fall, whatever, to get outdoors, get away from, pressure, stress. The family loved to go outdoors. They would do kayaking. They would do fishing. They would do camping. Very tight, close-knit family. And so he and his wife, Annie, were in the cabin that they owned, and the girls loved the grandparents. And, the grandparents would dote on them. And so they said, no, we want to sleep with Grandpa and Grandma tonight. And this was Thursday night. And so the mother and the father said, yeah, sure, okay. Grandparents loved having them. And so their cabin was like maybe 50 yards away from them, if that. And A.J. Harbor wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning because of all the heavy pounding of the rain. Now, he had gotten a flash flood warning earlier in the night, but it was for a different area. It wasn't for the area that they were in. So he thought, well, it's going to pass us by. We're going to be fine. Well, we'll get rain, but we'll be fine. He then got a second warning on his phone. Again, flash flood warning. This was more like about midnight. Again, not in his area. So what I'm saying is when you actually look at the facts, to somehow blame Trump for any of this is so insane. The meteorologists, and they were overstaffed, said, no, it's going to keep going. It's not going to hit this area in particular. And then for whatever reason, it stopped. And everybody keeps saying, this is the term they keep using, it was pounding rain. It's almost like it was raining, I don't know, it was like rocks from the sky. It was like boom, 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 boom. There was so much rain. It's almost like, I don't know, like God turned on the faucet. Whereas I like your phrase, it dumped rain. It just dumped water. And so he wakes up at 3 o'clock and he says, whoa, this is a lot of rain. So he then steps down on the ground and already on the floor of his cabin, and he goes, oh my God, just like his feet are wet. He goes, there's 4 inches of flooding right now. He wakes up his wife. So I was like, what? He goes, we got to get out of here. There's flooding. In the 2 minutes that it took for them just to get their bag, their phones, and their flashlight, that's all they got, the water had already reached up to the window. They couldn't get out through the front door. They then escaped through the window and then literally had to swim uphill. And then he saved one family. Okay, so I just very quickly, because this story, and there are so many like it, gives the lie to everything that the media, the left, the Democrats have been saying about what's happening in Texas. And it shows to me really how depraved they are, how insensitive, how callous, how almost inhuman they are in their reaction to suffering, because everything now is seen through the lens of politics and Marxist or communist ideology. So you have A.J. Harbor. He's the father. They barely get out of their cabin. They have to go through the window. Now, this all takes place within like 10 minutes. He brings his wife to safety. They start going up a hill. Now, he says what's amazing is the flash flooding was coming at him going up the hill at such a high speed. He warns one neighbor just to up one as he goes up the hill. He rescues them. They go to a second cabin. The water continues to pursue them. He warns a second neighbor. They rescue them. They get to a third cabin. Again, they rescue them, warn them, rescue them. All of them then make it to a house way at the top of the hill. And for now, they're relatively safe. So he's now saved, literally, at least 10 to 12 lives. But his 2 young daughters, 13 and 11, Blair and Brooke, are at the cabin lower on the part of the hill than where his cabin is. And he can just see that their cabin is, it's not there. The water level is so high, it's above the cabin. It's been completely submerged. And so he desperately asks one of his neighbors, because he kayaks, give me a kayak. He takes a life vest. He then starts paddling. Now remember, he's on a hill, for God's sake. And he's paddling against the onrushing floodwaters. And he says he barely made it back to his own cabin, furiously with this, he's stroking and stroking and paddling and paddling and paddling. And on his way, if you can imagine this, it's like a Hollywood movie, except it's real. Cars are flying at him, just swept up by the flash floods. Trees, massive trees are like, oh my God, it's coming right at me. And he's got to desperately try to paddle to avoid it. And then he says the part where his heart went into his throat is he began to hear this horrible sound. And it was the cabins being ripped off their foundations. And he saw the actual cabins floating right by him. He then got a text from his oldest daughter, Brooke. Dad, I love you. His wife, Annie, got the exact same text. Mom, I love you. The grandparents, the separate set of grandparents, on the mother's side, who live in Michigan, got a text from the 13-year-old girl telling her grandparents, I love you. A.J. Harbor knew that he was never going to see his daughters again. That final text was her basically saying, we're going to die now, but I want you to know I love you. He said he wanted to continue, paddled desperately towards their submerged cabin. The water was so strong, he said, I knew if I took one more stroke, it was my death sentence. I was signing my death sentence. And so he had to go back because the water was getting stronger and stronger and the current was getting stronger and stronger. That was Friday, about 4:30 in the morning, 5. Yesterday afternoon, they found his 2 girls 12 miles away. 12 miles from where the cabin was. Dead. He and his grieving wife, the mother, had to identify 13 and 11-year-old daughters. His father, the children's grandparents, the grandfather and the grandmother, his father and mother, are still missing. He says they hope they survived. He doubts it, but they haven't even been able to find the bodies yet. Now, honest to God, I don't know which party A.J. Harbor voted for. I don't know if he voted for Trump. I don't know if he voted for Kamala. I don't know if he didn't vote. I don't know if he voted for third-party candidate. And who cares? Like, seriously, who cares? Or his wife, Annie. Who cares? Or his parents, the grandparents, who obviously loved their grandchildren. They loved them so much, and they loved them, that they said, Daddy, Daddy, Mommy, please, can we stay with Grandpa and Grandma? Who cares? Like, honestly, who cares? What is wrong with you? They're human beings. They're fellow Americans. Don't you have children? Don't you have fathers and mothers? Don't you have grandparents? You think this is the way to die? So I'm sorry, but this sticks in my craw. This is the bone in my throat, as Nikita Khrushchev said in his famous speech at the UN in 1956. I can't swallow this one. I'm sorry. This is unacceptable to me. There are some things in life you don't say. There are some things in life you don't do. And there are some things in life you don't even think. You don't even think. You don't allow yourself to even think it. This is one of them. Now, I don't know what it is to bury a daughter or bury a son, to bury a child. I hope to God I never do. But I'm going to tell you something that my parents told me, my grandparents told me, and their parents told them. And this is the way of the world. Your children are supposed to bury you. You're not supposed to bury your children. The worst fate that can befall a parent or a grandparent is to bury their child or grandchild. And I'm telling you, with God as my witness, it would break my heart. It would tear my heart out. I'm not trying to be depressing on a Monday. I'm sorry. But I'm just telling you, this is what's happening in Texas. There's a lot of missing young children. You don't recover from this. I mean, you may walk. You may open your eyes. You may go to work. You may go through the motions. You're done. You're done, man. Your heart literally is broken. Do you understand? And those parents are going to live with the guilt. And it's not their fault, but it's natural guilt. Why did we let our two young daughters go with the grandparents? Why did I say yes? Because had they stayed with us, they would have been with me today. Why did I have to go, damn it, camping on that weekend? Why? Why? When I saw the flash floods warnings, but they said it wasn't going to affect that area. Why wasn't I extra precautious, damn it, and stayed home? I'm telling you, that's what's going to go through the minds of these parents for the rest of their lives. Why me and not my kids? God, why did you spare me and my wife, but you didn't spare my two daughters? I would have gladly taken their place. Take me, take my wife, but leave my children alone. Why were they taken and not me? And the guilt that they're gonna have for the rest of their lives. I survived and they didn't. Now, this poor man and his wife are gonna have to bury their two daughters and most likely A.J. Huber's father and mother. So he's losing his dad, his mom, and his two young girls. And these SOBs on the left are going on social media by the millions and saying you deserve it? You had it coming to you? Because Texas voted for Donald Trump? Or, you know what? No. Trump is to blame for your two dead girls because he cut the weather service. Even though he did no such thing. This is your response to a fellow citizen. It's not, I want to hug you. Let's pray. What can I do to help you now in your desperate, dire hour of need? How can I comfort you? How can I console you? What can I do for you? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to stand here and, we got to beat the Democrats, rah, rah, rah. Okay, look, let me be honest with you, okay, like I'm in the confessional. This is a very depressing topic. Really, it's very sad. It's very depressing. We're going to continue to follow what's happening in Texas, obviously. People are being, some people are being saved. They are being rescued. Apparently, a father was rescued late last night. That guy managed to hang on to a branch on a tree for over 2.5 days. I mean, God bless him. Okay, God bless him. So they're still finding a few missing people. And some of these stories of heroism among these rescue and recovery operations and people getting involved, some people have literally given their lives. They've died. We're talking about American heroes in the process of saving children and in the process of saving families. So amidst these idiot liberals who are trying to politicize this and blame Trump and celebrate, dead children, you're also seeing the best in America, truly the best in our country. People, volunteers, many of them risking their lives, some actually giving their lives as they brave these torrential flash floods, very treacherous, dangerous conditions. But they've managed to pull some people out and save them while giving their lives in the process. These are true American heroes. And to see the way the local governments, the state governments, Abbott and Dan Patrick, the governor, lieutenant governor, to see President Trump, to see this outpouring of patriotism and support, donations, by the way, through the roof, private donations, people wanting to help. This is, to me, what America is all about. So, it's not all doom and gloom. It's a tragedy, 82 dead, confirmed, dozens more missing, many of them children. It's a very sad story. But there's also some tremendous heroism and bravery and courage that we're seeing as well. The American spirit is rising to the challenge again. Let me just read one quick text, and then I want to get on to the other. There's a bombshell news that I want to talk about as well. If you're on the line, I'll continue to take your calls about Texas. I will throughout the entire show. But I need to talk about this second story. But let me just read this text because I think it pretty much hits the nail right on the head. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. This is from 603, and it is a beauty. Jeff, 2 points. As for the leftist lie that weather alerts weren't given because of Doge cuts, I have it on first-hand account from Texas that weather alerts for heavy rains and the potential for flash floods in central Texas did go out on Thursday, including being posted up on electronic highway signs. Unfortunately, no one could have predicted that the storm would stall in place for so many hours in that dry central hill country. Bingo. He's completely right, or she, whatever. 603 is completely right. That's what happened. Now, secondly, it's easy for all these self-centered leftist reprobates to run their callous mouths because it didn't happen in their communities, it didn't happen to their children, it didn't happen to them. And that's all that matters. Bingo. 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 Again, you look at these leftists. I meet liberals, Dems all the time. The most self-absorbed, selfish narcissists you will ever meet in your entire life. They don't care. Because it didn't happen to them, to their children, to their parents, to their grandparents, to their families, to their communities. So they look at Texas and they see a red state. And they go, good, good, let them drown. Good, let them die. Okay, my friends, now, this broke over the weekend as well. And in many ways, the horrific, tragic flash floods in Texas has now obscured this absolute bombshell news. Over the weekend, Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and in particular, FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, issued a public memo in which they now say definitively, conclusively, This is their final decision, and they will no longer talk about it or investigate it. The case, as far as they're concerned, is now closed. And that is the Jeffrey Epstein files. And so, according to Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pam Bondi, number one, they say that Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted pedophile, okay, the billionaire who was known for preying upon children and was a notorious child sex predator and a pedophile, committed suicide in his jail cell. They say, as far as they're concerned, it is definitive. It was a suicide. It was not murder. And they are not going to investigate this anymore. And as far as they're concerned, case closed. Secondly, and even more incredibly, it gets worse. It literally gets worse. Secondly, and even more incredibly, they're now claiming that Jeffrey Epstein never had a client list. Ever. That there was no client list, and that Jeffrey Epstein not only did not have a client list, but that according to them, Jeffrey Epstein never blackmailed anyone. He never blackmailed anyone in Hollywood. He never blackmailed anyone in politics. He never blackmailed anyone in business. He never, ever blackmailed anyone. And that he never had a client list. And not only did he never have a client list, as far as they're concerned, they have now closed the case on Epstein completely. It is for them now done and over. Okay. And by the way, no one is going to be arrested. No one is going to be arrested at all for Epstein Island, for preying on all these underage girls, for, forgive me, the sex parties, the orgies, the notorious orgies with 14, 13, 12-year-old girls that took place on that island. And that they're going to store and seal all of the documents that they have on Epstein, and they will no longer release anything more to the public. In other words, it's a full cover-up. It is a full and complete cover-up. Now, let me take them each one by one, and then I want to get your reaction. 617-266-6868 is the number. On the suicide front, what they're now telling us is, we have looked at the video, and in particular, this is what they're claiming, the video in the hallway where there was the special housing unit that connected people to the cell block that Jeffrey Epstein was in, that they looked at that video, and that the video over this 24-hour period, the day that, the night that Epstein was left alone in his cell, and then at 6:30 in the morning when he was found, discovered, apparently having hung himself with a bedsheet that he turned into a noose, which they claimed was a suicide. That video shows no one going into the hall or outside the hall for that entire 24-hour period. And so they say, based off of that, there is no evidence whatsoever that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered. None whatsoever. That this was a pure suicide on his part, and that to say he was murdered is, quote-unquote, a conspiracy theory. Are they going to release the actual video that they claim they now have of him in his jail cell hanging himself? No. That is, they're not going to release. So they claim to have the video of where he hung himself, but they're not going to release it. What about the fact that he was on suicide watch, and there was supposed to be another inmate with him in the cell. And yet, that evening, inexplicably, they took that person out of the cell and left him all by himself. They're not answering that question. Furthermore, that surveillance footage was destroyed. They're not answering that question. Furthermore, that one of the cameras apparently wasn't able to work that night. Conveniently. They're not answering. The fact that both security guards allegedly fell asleep that night and hence were unable to see what happened in that cell, they're not answering. So, let me tell you, it's pretty obvious. They're trying to cover this up. But then they made to me what is a ridiculous, this is such an obvious cover-up now. Pam Bondi has been on Fox News multiple times. I have the transcript right in front of me. Okay? Right in front of me. I can read it to you verbatim if you want. Where she is asked specifically, in one case it was on Fox and Friends with Steve Doocy. Steve Doocy literally says to her, do you have the client list of Jeffrey Epstein? Her answer, yes, it is on my desk and I am reviewing it right now. And once I've done reviewing it, we will release it to the public. She then gave another interview, different show on Fox. Do you have the client list of Jeffrey Epstein? Her answer, yes, it's on my desk. I'm going through it right now, and we will eventually release it to the American people because President Trump has ordered us to release the Epstein client list to the American people. So, how can the client list, which she said that she had, which his lawyer, Epstein's lawyer, says he had, which Epstein repeatedly bragged over 2 decades that he had, which Ghislaine Maxwell, his accomplice and partner in crime, says he had. She called it the Black Book. Which Dan Bongino, which Kash Patel, before they got into their current positions at the FBI, said that he had. And suddenly now, it's not even that there's no client list, i.e. we destroyed it. Their claim is there never was a client list. So Pam Bondi was lying when she spoke to Fox? I'm just asking. So let me get this straight. Ghislaine Maxwell was lying? Jeffrey Epstein for 2 decades was lying? Everybody, his lawyer is lying? Everybody was lying about the client list? And then, that he never blackmailed anybody, which we know was a lie. Because countless people have attested to the fact that they were blackmailed. And that it was extremely well known among high circles, both political, corporate, Hollywood, that he held that so-called black book, the client list, over them like a gun to their head. And that he had the videos, he had the surveillance cameras, the tapes that implicated so many of them. All of that, tens and tens of thousands of hours of footage that now Pam Bondi says we will never, ever see. It's going to be locked away. Okay? Put away under lock and key. So this man who literally extorted and blackmailed so many wealthy people, he became a billionaire. All of a sudden now, magically, never blackmailed anybody? Bull, you know what I want to say, but I'll be fined. Okay? Bravo Sierra, bull crap. And underline crap. And this isn't even a sophisticated cover-up. This is in your face. This was done, number one, over the 4th of July weekend. Let's be honest. You were outside barbecuing. I was outside barbecuing. Most of us, it's 4th of July weekend. We have a life, man. We're normal people. We got friends. We got family. We got, stuff to do, people to see. So who pays attention during that news cycle? Hardly anybody. It was done after the signing of the big, beautiful bill on Friday. Again, if you follow anything, you're going to follow the BBB and the fallout. And, of course, the big Texas flash floods, which pulls at, unless you're a moonbat, okay? Unless you're a mutant, all right, a stone-cold commie, pulls at everyone's heartstrings. So, under all of this cover, that's when they released this bombshell. Now, let me just say a few more things, and then I want to open it up to you. 617-266-6868. Pam Bondi is a joke. I don't want to hear any more excuses about Pam Bondi. I don't want to hear how she was good in Florida. I don't want to hear how she's getting her feet under her. I don't want to hear how she's only been there for a couple months. I don't want to hear about how you like the way she looks on TV. I don't want to hear about, oh, Jeff, we can't criticize Pam Bondi. No, I'm criticizing Pam Bondi. This is an effing cover-up. You're lying to me, and you're lying to the victims. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino should resign. On the spot, they should resign. And let me tell you why. Number one, both of them, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, when one was pushing a book and the other one was, a mouth flapper and had a show, both of them consistently said repeatedly that the overwhelming preponderance of the evidence showed that was not a suicide by Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, it couldn't have been a suicide. Just the specific, the hyoid bone, I think that's how you pronounce it, the hyoid bone in his neck that was snapped could only have been broken by strangulation, homicide, murder, than by, a hanging, by suicide. Okay? Just that alone. Never mind everything else. They were the ones saying again and again and again, this could not have been a suicide. It was definitely a murder. Take it to the bank. Suddenly now they do a complete 180. They have been co-opted by the FBI bureaucracy. They came in to drain the swamp, as so often happens. They've now become part of the swamp. Secondly, these are the same two guys that went on about that client list and how they had all kinds of sources telling them, you wouldn't believe the names on this list. Oh, my God. This reaches to the top, the very top, the very top. Now, all of a sudden, you're not even telling us you won't release it. You're trying to tell us there never was a client list. There never was a black book, ever. That this was all the figment of everyone's collective imagination. Are you kidding me? And that he never, that Epstein never blackmailed anybody. Never, ever, 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 ever. Kash Patel is a BSer. Dan Bongino is a BSer. I see guys like them all the time. They're salesmen. They hawk books. They put on a show. They do anything for ratings. They say anything. But ultimately, they don't believe a word that they say. With them, it's all about money and power and influence. To me, Bondi, Patel, and Bongino are a joke. They're an absolute joke. This doesn't even smell cover-up. This is such a blatant cover-up. Anybody could see it. Even Ray Charles could see it. Anybody can see this is a cover-up. And so the question is, why? Why? Why are these three willing to destroy their reputations and what's left of their credibility to engage in the most obvious, blatant cover-up in the last 50 years? And I think the reason is obvious. Jeffrey Epstein was CIA. He may have even been Mossad as well. But he was definitely CIA. As James Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, when he spilled the beans, and Pam Bondi panicked and said, I have to call him up. He can't be talking like this. Comer said, our government was using Epstein to blackmail some of the most powerful people in the world. And that's why they had to get rid of him. And that's why they can't allow the Epstein files, the client list, and all the black book, and all of this incriminating information, evidence, and videos to ever come out. Because the American people would never accept that our government was willing to allow a man to enable child sex predators and pedophiles. Okay, the mother of all cover-ups. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, along with Kash Patel, the FBI Director, and Don Bongino, the Deputy FBI Director, all three of them, in absolute unison, now say conclusively that they claim that Epstein never was murdered. He committed suicide. He killed himself. Case closed. 2, there never was a client list. Ever, ever, ever. And 3, he never blackmailed anyone. They say now not only is the case closed, they have stopped all investigations, but they say they will not release a scintilla of evidence from this point forward. Everything, the thousands and thousands of pages, documents, videos, tapes, everything will remain under seal, never to be seen again. 617-266-6868. Do you believe Pam Bondi and Kash and Dan Bongino? Or do you think they're covering up? You know my position on this? I think this screams cover up. It's an obvious cover up. And then the question is, why? Who or what are they protecting? 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Brenda in Beverly. Thanks for holding, Brenda, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Brenda.
I actually called about the Texas flooding, and if I could add after that about this new development, because my head's going to blow off about this whole thing with the Jeffrey Epstein thing. But the first thing I wanted to say, because you had spent a long time talking about, the response of those on the other side of the aisle, and my take on that is, it really isn't a stretch for these people on the other side of the aisle to go where they're going. Their hearts and their minds are really twisted up, Jeff. They're really depraved. And I'm saying this with humility, and I'm saying this as a sinner. I'm a sinner like the next guy. They come from a worldly perspective and not a godly perspective. And we have to remember that their foundation is built on a culture of death and not a culture of life. And this is evidenced, by their applauding and their praising on a daily basis of the killing of unborn innocent boys and girls in the womb. They call that health care. They call that reproductive justice. There's nothing being reproduced. That's a life that's being snuffed out and eliminated. So we're dealing with something that is demonic, and it's at another level that they can't even go there because it's too much for them, because they'd have to look at themselves and whatnot. So God tells us to pray for them and to forgive them. It's very difficult. I say to God every day, oh, God, I really don't want to pray for these people. I really am having a hard time forgiving these people. But we must do that because people can change, and we believe that at some point maybe their hearts and minds will change, and they'll recognize the horror of what they've been believing, which is lies. Now, with that said, I'm going to go and shift to this whole Jeffrey Epstein, BS cover-up. Beyond disappointed, Pam Bondi, I got a vibe from the very beginning. I'm like, okay, there's something wrong with this chick. I loved her as the Attorney General in Florida. But sometimes maybe you're not meant to go to the next level. Maybe that's where she needed to stay. All the time on Fox and all these couture outfits, which I did like that white outfit that she had as a chick. I'm like, oh, I do like that. However, you need to get off the TV and enough with the couture outfits. There's something not only fishy going on here, but what do they think? We're nuts? We're stupid out here? Are you flipping serious? Are you you're going to close it now? This is the same chick that a month after she came on board was going to do this big reveal. Remember that, Jeff? Oh, I'm going to do this big reveal. And it was like, it was nothing. It's like, what was that all about? She inflated it to be like, yeah, we're going to have like this. Yeah, we're going to find out who's on the list. And we found Jack Bleep. So something is very concerning, Jeff. Who's on that list? I hate to even go there. I hate to even go there. Okay? Because my brain's going to blow up. It's very, very concerning that now that this case closed, who is on that list, Jeff? Who's on the list?
Well, look. Well, look. We know it's been widely reported. Let me just state this is like low-hanging fruit. Bill Clinton is on the list. I don't know how many trips he made to Fantasy Island. And remember, Epstein threw notorious, again, forgive me, it's a family show, but that's what he threw. Orgies. These were massive sex parties that would, put Sean Diddy Combs to shame, where 12, 13-year-old girls, many of them in dungeons, in chains, were repeatedly sexually assaulted, raped, and molested. Bill Gates, according to his wife, I'm going by his wife, she said the big reason why I divorced Bill Gates, or one of the reasons, this guy wouldn't stop going to Epstein Island. And we all know what the hell happens on Epstein Island. It's not just a bunch of guys, with 25, 30-year-old women or whatever, above-age women, having steaks and drinking and having a little hanky-panky. Okay? They were kids. He was a pedophile. He was a rabid, sick pedophile. Now, look, I just want to read to you something, because to me, this is to me incredible. This is absolutely, it's absolutely to me incredible. So, apparently now, according to Pam Bondi, she issued a statement. And in her statement, this is what she said, that according to the Department of Justice, there is no basis or any evidence to claim that there was a client list, that there existed a client list, or that anyone has a client list. And that there is also no evidence that Epstein blackmailed powerful figures. Now, she went on Fox repeatedly and said she has the Jeffrey Epstein client list and it's on her desk. She just said it a couple of months ago. So, either she was lying then or she's lying now. And I believe clearly she's lying now. But either way, she's a liar. And I don't want her as AG anymore. Out. Out. Okay, lines are jammed. I want to go right back to the phones. Just very, very quick. Let me just give you some important information. Apparently, this so-called bombshell memo, and it is a bombshell, was leaked to Axios. Now, the leak itself is very telling. Axios is an anti-Trump, very left-wing liberal media outlet. So why is Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, why are they leaking this information that there was no murder, that Epstein died of a suicide, that there was no client list ever, and that that Epstein never blackmailed anybody? And furthermore, that they are not going to release any more materials, any more evidence, any more videos. The case is not only closed, it is going to be sealed shut. It is over. They are not going to investigate. They're not releasing any more information. They are literally slamming the door on the Epstein case and on the Epstein files. And you leak it to Axios? What happened to Fox News? As an example. I mean, why isn't Pam Bondi running on Fox News and announcing this? If this is all so on the up and up. Now, the liberal media is already running wild with this, saying, you see, they're all lies. Epstein never blackmailed anybody. There was no client list. This was all a crazy conspiracy theory. Even Pam Bondi, even Trump's own DOJ, even his own FBI, even Bongino and Kash Patel, even they're saying it. That's why it was leaked to Axios. Now, I want to read to you, okay? This is Pam Bondi, literally just a couple of months ago. And she goes on Fox News. And this is what she told the host, Steve Doocy. Quote, this is Steve Doocy now, talking to Pam Bondi. I saw your appearance at CPAC with Steve Bannon and Ted Cruz. And one of the things you've alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? Pam Bondi, quote, it's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing the JFK files, the MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed. She then went on Fox again a month later. So now we're into late March. She went on Fox. Here's what she said. She was asked, when are we going to see the Epstein files and the Epstein client list? Quote, it is on my desk as we speak. I am reviewing it. My attorneys are reviewing it. Once we are done with the Epstein client list, we will release it to the public. That was in March. She then, by the way, further said that in an FBI office in New York, that they found a, quote, truckload of Epstein files, and that it had just arrived at the Department of Justice, thousands of pages. FBI was reviewing them. Now, over the 4th of July weekend, with the flash floods in Texas, with the signing of the big, beautiful bill, with everybody out, enjoying the beautiful weather and 4th of July, the fireworks, the hamburgers, the hot dogs, the whole kit and caboodle, suddenly, memo sent out in the dead of night. It was a suicide, no client list, no blackmail, case closed. So what happened to the truckload of evidence? What happened to the client list? What happened to the black book? What happened to the truth? That's gone. That's gone. Now, I can do this all day. I'm just going to do one. Okay? Just one. Because I want to go to the phone lines. This is unbelievable. Okay? Her name, Sarah Ransom. She was one of the many victims of Ghislaine Maxwell. And by the way, Larry in Leominster makes a brilliant point on Messenger. So if there was no client list, and he wasn't blackmailing anybody, and there were no co-conspirators whatsoever, who the hell was Ghislaine Maxwell trafficking all these women to? Like, she was trafficking women for who? To what? Like, hello? Like, hello? So what was she convicted for? Now, Sarah Ransom is a victim of Ghislaine Maxwell. During the trial, she addressed the media. Okay? Now, I want you to listen to this. So the FBI, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Attorney General Pam Bondi have the face, the chutzpah, as the Jews would say, to conclude that Epstein killed himself and there was no client list. Really? Okay. This is Sarah Ransom. Quote, I think she's in her mid-30s now, or at least at the time when she said this. I have spent the last 17 years in my own prison for what she, meaning Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey, meaning Jeffrey Epstein, and all the co-conspirators did to me. I was raped repeatedly. I was raped 3 times per day sometimes. And I was not the only girl on that island. There was a constant stream of girls being raped over and over and over again. Now, she was 16 at the time when she said she was basically kidnapped or whatever. They brought her in under false pretenses. They drugged her, effectively kidnapped her, and then basically held her in a sex dungeon where they just raped her and raped her and raped her and raped her. Now, there were girls as young as 12. It wasn't just Epstein. There were parties, there were orgies. They brought him in, some of the most powerful in Hollywood, in politics, in business, you name it. So, are all the witnesses lying? By the way, there were dozens of them at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So, they're all lying. Ghislaine Maxwell's lying. Epstein was lying. Epstein's lawyer is lying. Everybody's lying. Suddenly now there's no client list. No. None of this ever happened. It's a figment of everybody's imagination. Like, how stupid, really, I want to, if I had Bongino, if he had the guts to come on my show, I'd say, tell me, how stupid do you think we are? Like, you guys couldn't come up with a better cover story than this? And notice, now all what they're saying is this, trust us. Like blind faith. We've seen it. There's no evidence. Move on. No. We saw the videotape. Can we see the videotape? No, there's no video. You can't see it. We saw it. The client list, it doesn't exist. But she said it existed. Well, she misspoke. It doesn't exist. Trust us. He never blackmailed anybody? There's no evidence. Trust us. It doesn't exist. The FBI lied about the Russia collusion hoax. The FBI has repeatedly destroyed evidence. The FBI lied about Hunter Biden's laptop. The FBI they lied about the stolen election in 2020. Okay, let me ask you. I want to go right to the blazing phone lines. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. Is there a client list? In other words, do you believe Jeffrey Epstein had a quote-unquote client list, black book, however you want to call it? Because now, unbelievably, incredibly, they've all done a 180-degree reversal. Pam Bondi says it doesn't exist, never existed. Dan Bongino, that sellout, says it doesn't exist, never existed. Kash Patel, that loser, says it never existed, doesn't exist. I feel like I'm living in Stalin's Russia, really. Like, what? You're literally contradicting what you just said yesterday. But that's me. Look, I want to hear from you. A, yes, there is a client list. B, no, there isn't and never was a client list. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn is in national ER. You can also vote via X, and as you know, I'm very active on X. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, Kuhner. To me, this is the mother of all cover-ups. There's obviously a client list. No, the problem is there are too many powerful people on that client list. Hence, bury this story once and for all. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Let's go to George in Gloucester. Thanks for holding, George, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, I think that 100% is a client list. I think the other thing is it's kind of interesting if you look at the course of the last few weeks that the Supreme Court has overwhelmingly favored for Trump. And I think rightfully so. It's what they should be doing. But especially John Roberts is joining all of these decisions. So I know it's conspiracy theory, but it seems very interesting to me that all of a sudden now there's no client list. There's nothing going on. There was never anything happening with Epstein. It looks like payback.
Interesting. Kind of like a quid pro quo.
It seems that way because obviously they're getting something from this. How could they be standing there telling us for months that there was all of this evidence and data and it was going to all be released? Now nothing exists. Something's going on. I mean, it's very obvious. Something has to be going on.
You know, I got to ask you, George, and look, I think your theory is very plausible. Very, very plausible. In fact, likely, highly likely. George, this is what I just find incredible. Look, Pam Bondi's not a stupid woman, you know, whatever you think about her. Dan Bongino's not a stupid man. Kash Patel is certainly not a stupid man. I read his book, Government Gangsters. It's a very good book. Hell, I was so excited. I wanted him to be the FBI director. I thought he was going to follow through on all of his promises. So we're not dealing with, imbeciles. Quite the contrary. Don't they realize they have no credibility now? Or have they become so out of touch that they think they can just bamboozle us like this? Openly, blatantly lie to our faces and protect child rapists. And I don't know, maybe, George, they're just banking on the fact that in this country, only poor people or working class people or middle class people go to jail for molesting or raping or, violating children, but that the wealthy and the powerful can act with impunity, that there is a network, an elite above us that can do the most heinous crimes, even to children, and get away with it? Anyway, George, what do you account for all of this? Leaving aside Justice John Roberts for a second. I mean, doesn't Bongino and Patel and Pam Bondi realize we look at them now as absolute liars and frauds and traitors? Am I wrong, George?
Oh, I think you're 100% right, but I think that they're being sacrificed for the fact that they're getting this other court rulings that are, in their eyes, probably more critical than what was going on with Epstein. So they're willing to forget about that in order to get what I think they see as the bigger picture with immigration and all of these injunctions that are being put on the administration. So they're doing a quid pro quo, I think, clearly, and someone has to somewhat be sacrificed in this, and it looks like it's the DOJ and the FBI, unfortunately.
Interesting. Look, George, just to reinforce your point, Roberts in the last month, 3 weeks, month, with many of his decisions on these, you're right, very important rulings, is like the Justice John Roberts we thought we were getting. 2 decades ago? That was the conservative jurist we all thought we were getting. He's like a new man. He's like a born-again conservative. In the last 3 weeks, something has changed. And maybe this is it. In other words, we won't release your file, okay? Everything stays, on the down low. Wink, wink. Now, come on. Start ruling the way you're supposed to rule. George, dynamite call. Thank you for that call. Agree, disagree? I'm just curious. 617-266-6868. Bob in Dartmouth. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome. Bob? Hello, Bob?
Hello, Jeff?
Yes, Bob, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Great. Well, listen, I can be very brief. I'm going to drag you back to the tragedy of the day. You touched on this earlier, but I was disgusted to hear everyone trying to make their points. Oh, it's a blue state, it's a red state. And I was pulled back to the book of Luke, where Jesus finds his disciples talking about a couple of the tragedies of the day, the Galileans who were slaughtered by Pontius Pilate. They said their blood was mingled with their sacrifices. And then he says, or those 18 upon whom the tower of Siloam fell and killed them. Do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others in Jerusalem? I tell you, no. And so the time for easy lessons, and you touched on this, and I was so touched. This is not the time for easy lessons. This is the time to hug your children, to make up with your wife that you've been fighting with, to try to understand your neighbor who you can't stand. This is the time to realize we're all so far from perfect, pointing fingers at anyone. They didn't have an early warning system, this or that. This isn't the time for easy lessons. This is the time to be better people and send money to the victims and cry for them.
And pray for them. Everything, you're completely right, Bob, and very powerful, very beautiful. I would just add and pray for them. Pray for those little children. Pray for all those who died. Pray for their souls. But also, pray for the survivors. Pray for the parents who've lost their children, or lost their parents, or lost their loved ones. Because, again, Bob, I don't want to be too depressing. I wear my heart on my sleeve. That's how I am. I could not go on without my kids. I love my kids. Of course, I love my wife dearly, but what I'm saying is my kids are everything to me. To me, it's what life is all about. And I want to see them, God willing, graduate from high school, and God willing, get married, and God willing, have children of their own. And to me, this is what life's all about. And of course, I have to pass away. Everybody does. And, that's what I said. You're supposed to bury your parents. Your parents are not supposed to bury you. But sadly, it happens where the parents have to bury their children. And what makes this thing in Texas so tough, so gut-wrenching, and I don't want to seem callous. Look, I hate it whenever a disaster happens. I really do. And every life that's lost is tragic. It is. It really is. But, we're not talking even about adults. I mean, there are adults who've lost their lives. But so many of them are 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old kids. A, they're so innocent. B, they barely begun their own life. You know, they barely had a chance to live. And then, I'm sorry, but to me, this is just a tearjerker on top of a tearjerker. Kids with their parents and grandparents at the cabin for 4th of July. They're going to go camping. They're going to go kayaking. They're going to go fishing. I remember when I was young, loved fishing with my father, loved camping with my dad and my sister and my mom. Some of the best memories of my life that I'll take with me to my grave. And having a little cookout on the grill or on the barbecue and being with my parents and my sister and enjoying the outdoors. Those are memories that last you a lifetime. It's what life's all about. And to see that poor summer camp, that all-girls camp with 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, I got pictures. Look, I've got the New York Post. I got a stack of papers right beside me. Many of those girls that are dead or missing, they have missing teeth. They're so young. They still don't even have, their adult teeth. They still have their baby teeth, and they're losing their baby teeth. So, kids at that age have, missing teeth. And you see the wholesome smiles, and it just, I don't know what the parents, how do you live with something like this as a parent? It rips your heart out. And then you got to hear these idiots on top of it all. You deserve it. Why? Your state voted for Trump. You're a sick, sick, sick puppy. Seriously. Look at yourself in the mirror. That's what I tell all these people. Look at yourself in the mirror. Pray for these people. If you can, send money. Love your neighbor, hug your children, love your spouse, be grateful for everything that you have. Because you know what this ultimately shows? This is not about climate change or early warning systems or anything like that. When your number's up, your number's up. A disaster is an act of God. That's all it is. It's an act of God. And for whatever reason, God has his plan. And when your number is up, your number is up. And that's it. It's the end. So to me, all weekend long, I'm not kidding. I played with my kids. I played in the pool. I played outside. They wanted me to take them to a movie. I didn't want to see the movie. I took them to their movie. I spent time with the children and with Grace all weekend long. More than ever. Because you never know. The future is not yours. I keep telling this to everybody. The future is not yours. The future is in God's hands. All these people are like, I'm going to be here another 20 years, another 30 years. Says who? You could go like this. Like this. You could be going to a 4th of July campsite at a cabin that you own, that you've owned for many years, that you've gone dozens of times to fish, to kayak, to enjoy the outdoors, and you're sleeping, and you wake up at 3 a.m, and all of a sudden, everything is being swept away. Suddenly, you're dead, or your children are dead, or your parents are dead. In the stroke of an eye, it's all gone. So appreciate every second. And you're right. That's the lesson we should be taking from this. No, the liberals want to blame Trump. I mean, I try to appeal to them. You're losing your humanity. Do you understand? You're losing your soul. It's not worth it. Thank you very much for that call. Very powerful call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let me just say this about losing your soul. Money isn't everything. Power isn't everything. I'm telling you, fame isn't everything. You don't have to be involved in a cover-up. There's no dishonor in resigning. Seriously. I know everybody wants to be FBI director or deputy FBI director, thinking maybe one day you'll be FBI director, or everybody wants to be attorney general, where everybody bows at your feet, and you can get unlimited access to the media, and instant name recognition, and instant fame, and immense power. But I'm telling you, it's not worth your soul. And honestly, if they asked me to walk the plank and said, no, you got to put your name to this, Kuhner. You've got to say there was no client list, it was a suicide, and he never blackmailed anybody. I'm resigning effective immediately. Bye. I'm holding a press conference and I'm saying, no, there is a client list. He was blackmailing people and Epstein was killed. Okay? Who are you going to believe? Pam Bondi or your own eyes? 617 or her own words. Her own words, Hanger. 617-266-6868. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Mark, how are you, my friend?
I'm going to comment on both topics today, but first, you sound like you need a good laugh. So I'm just happy to report to you that I did not spend the weekend of 4th of July in jail when I got pulled over talking to you last week.
I know they pulled you over, and I think it was your license or something. But like something was expired.
No, I was on my phone.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no hands. No hands. I remember. Yeah, we even heard part of that back and forth with the officer. I think he just gave you a warning, right, Mark?
Nope, he didn't even give me that, Jeff. He let me go.
Did you mention that you were calling me?
I told him I was on the radio with Jeff Kuhner.
Well, that's it. There you go, huh? You didn't even get a warning, Mark.
not even a written warning. But, Jeff, let's get to the subject at hand here. First off, I'm with you. The Jeffrey Epstein bullcrap, they're lying. They're full of crap. It was a cover-up, and I don't believe them. And you know something, Jeff? They did this 180. There are people on that list, Jeff, that just might upset us, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now, back to Texas. Okay. First off, the people like Rosie O'Donnell and anybody else that wants to blame Trump, I got news for you. Okay. You could have all the degrees in meteorology you want. You can be a freaking genius. Okay. But you cannot and will never predict Mother Nature. She has it on all of us, Jeff. And there's no saying different. Do you agree with that?
Completely. As I like to say, not 100%, but 1,000%.
When I want to check the weather, Jeff, I go out on my front porch. That's what I do. I don't listen to these buffoons on the news because they're all full of crap. Okay? They're all full of crap. And you know what? This is what the Democrats do, Jeff. And they say it out loud on TV. What do they always say to us, Jeff? Never let a tragedy or a crisis go to waste. And this is why they are scumbags, and this is why they are pure evil, plain and simple.
Mark, I wish I could disagree with you. I can't. As usual, you've hit the nail right on the head, buddy. Thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Tommy in West Virginia. Thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Number one, with all three of these people, Cash, Bondi, and Bongino, I think they're all compromised. And if Trump's people are listening, if these people are going to cover up something like this, they're going to stab you in the back, Mr. President. Make no mistake. You have to learn from your past mistakes with your first administration of people that stabbed you in the back, that leaked stuff. And Pam Bondi clearly was on record saying she would release the client list. And three prominent people that are on that client list, one of them whom I'm a huge fan of, is Alan Dershowitz. There's also Bill Clinton, I don't like, and there's also Bill Gates, I don't like. But I'm of the opinion, let the cards fall where it will. We need to know what kind of pillars in our community are degenerates. It would be a cleansing of the soul. And with regards to what happened in Texas, I haven't watched the news yet. And your two callers ago, I could feel that. I could feel that in his heart. I could not imagine what it must be like to lose a child like that. And if anybody throws a political agenda into what happened over the weekend, shame on you. I've tried to talk to this one progressive talk show host on a very low-rated show. I won't mention where. And he always uses the term that with regards to China, they are the world's biggest polluter. America is not. And China is going to continue to build coal-fired power plants till the year 2050. And what he always says to me, he goes, well, they'll eventually catch up. But we need to go carbon neutral now. Electric cars, all the above, solar, wind, yada, yada. And I say, so hang on one second. If I use your logic with regards to that we now know man-made climate change, burning coal.
617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, bombshell story. A memo, official memo, straight from the Department of Justice and from the FBI, signed by Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino. They now say it is official. The Epstein files and the Epstein case is closed. It was a suicide. He was not killed or murdered. There is no client list. In fact, they say there never was a client list, and Epstein never blackmailed anybody. You may be saying, Jeff, but that literally directly contradicts what Pam Bondi repeatedly said on the record, that she had the client list, it was on her desk at the DOJ, she was reviewing it and would release it to the public. Yep, well, that was then and this is now. So, many are now calling for Pam Bondi to either hold a press conference and explain herself, or that she should be fired by Trump. So let me ask you, is it time for Pam Bondi to go? In fact, is it time for her, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino to go? Or should Trump wait at least a few more months? Because it is awfully early to get rid of your Attorney General, your FBI Director, and your Deputy FBI Director. But make no mistake about it. This is a slap in the face to the American people, and it's an insult to our intelligence. Agree, disagree. Let's go back to Tommy in West Virginia. Tommy, you were talking about this crazy Moonbat radio host that you debate with about China, and that essentially these liberals and moonbats are so irrational and so ignorant, it's almost impossible to have a discussion or a debate with them. Please pick up where you left off.
Okay, so the argument that they will make with regards to so-called man-made climate change is that we in the West went through the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s and 1900s, belching out basically coal ash into the sky, which has changed the climate of planet Earth. So we found that out sometime maybe in the 1960s, 70s, and then in our country we mandated the Clean Air Act of the 1980s. Remember the term acid rain?
Yes.
Okay, so what do? We put scrubbers on our coal-fired power plants so they're no longer belching out ash into the atmosphere. I worked on one in Lumberport, West Virginia, the Harrison Power Plant back in 91. It was mandated. China is not required. They don't mandate that their coal-fired power plants do that. So what this idiot says is, oh, well, they'll eventually catch up. So here's where I get him. I said, okay, so we're agreed that belching coal ash into the atmosphere is bad. It's going to change the climate. Are we agreed on that? He says, yes. I said, so if I use your logic, parts of the Middle East, Asia, and Europe, and Africa had slavery for at least 2,000 years of recorded history since Jesus Christ was born. And he says, where are you going with this? I said, well, the United States, we only had slavery for 244 years, from 1619 to 1863. So if I use your logic, because the rest of the world was committing essentially sins towards humanity, well, we should get another, 1,800 years or so? Like I said, when you try and use logic with a lot of these people, it just goes out the window. And all I can say with regards to President Trump, I'm going to repeat it. Mr. President, all three of these appointments, I believe, are compromised. You need to put them into a room. You need to put them on a lie detector privately. And you know something? If you find out they're compromised, fire them. But do it in a very polite way that they're seeking future endeavors, because they are going to stab this man in the back. Make no mistake. Jeff, thank you for taking my call. God bless.
As always, thank you, Tommy. Look, they screwed Trump on this, I think. More importantly, they screwed the American people. They screwed the victims. Look, we were promised the Epstein list. Pam Bondi promised it to us. President Trump ordered them to release the client list. And now they're telling us not only are they not going to release it, but now they're telling us it never existed. Well, maybe it doesn't, or it doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist because I think they destroyed it. See, that's another, to me, she's got to be put under oath. So, whoa. What do you mean it no longer exists? Well, you told us it was on your desk. You told us, in fact, multiple times it was on your desk and you were reviewing it. In fact, we even have her on the record saying that she's gone over the client list and that it turns her stomach of the powerful people that were involved. And she says that she's looked at many of the videos and the images and that she finds it stomach turning. Not just what Epstein did, but what his other so-called co-conspirators did. So was she lying then the whole time as well? Like, come on. Hey, come on. We're not that stupid. Now, here's what's going to happen. There is massive blowback now from conservatives. These are all the staunchest Trump allies you can find. And they are smoking mad. They're not buying it for a second. Okay? Not even for a second. And they're now putting tremendous pressure on Bondi, on Patel, on Bongino, and of course on Trump. They're now just going to pretend like it never happened. That's why they leaked it to Axios. That's why they leaked it over this busy news cycle weekend and the 4th of July. And now they're going to move on to something else. That's their strategy. Now, we should not let her off the hook, and we shouldn't let Kash Patel and Dan Bongino off the hook. They're not going to make any arrests. All of this talk about they were going to arrest these Democrat criminals and deep staters, have you noticed not one arrest so far? They're not going to do a damn thing. So, I want to ask you, do you believe Pam Bondi when she says Epstein committed suicide? Case closed. There was no client list. There is no client list. There never was a client list. Case closed. And that Epstein never blackmailed a single person. And that now they're not going to release any more evidence, any more documents. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is from Larry on Messenger. And I don't blame him. I really don't blame him. Here's his reaction, obviously, to the stunning news issued from the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that they are now closing the entire case on Jeffrey Epstein, and they're now making it official. They now say it was a suicide. It was not murder. That there was no client list. Now they're claiming there never was a client list, and that Epstein blackmailed nobody. It's mind-boggling that they would even say this, but that's what they're going with, and that they're not going to release a shred of any more evidence or files or images or documents, that this case is now sealed and will be locked away somewhere in a vault, never to be discussed or opened again. Jeff, for years, I gave you 4 hours every weekday and Dan Bongino an hour on his podcast. If Bongino said today that I'm going back to his old show, I don't think I can go back. My loyalty can only go so far. I do feel betrayed. Well, honestly, you should feel betrayed. He lied. He lied to all of his listeners. He lied to all of us. Remember, he's the one that said it was clearly murder. That he had all these sources that told him this was murder, this was not suicide. Epstein, no way did he off himself. And he went on about the client list, again, that he had overwhelming evidence of the client list, and that Epstein was blackmailing everybody. And now he suddenly does a complete 180? Kash Patel, same thing? To me, Bondi, it's even worse. It's even worse. So, very quickly, I've never seen this before. All of the top MAGA influencers, all of them, are now blasting Pam Bondi for this decision. Laura Loomer, for example. I can cite you many examples. I'm just using her as an example. Laura Loomer has now come out and said, I told you Pam Bondi was a liar when she went on Fox and claimed that she had the client list on her desk. She was either lying then or she's lying now. It doesn't matter. She's a liar and she needs to go. I just want to read to you very quickly. I've had her on the show. We did a big rally with her a couple months ago. I have nothing but the highest respect for her. And this is Ann Vandersteel. She is as MAGA can get, and she is ferociously loyal to Trump and the staunchest defender of Trump. Here is what she now wrote. Quote, memo to President Trump's Department of Justice. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. We all see you very clearly now. Your DOJ is not making any major Democrat arrests, and you're not telling us why. Why is it okay for Biden to defraud the American people for 4 years? Why is it okay for the Democrats to open our border, causing great personal injury and loss of life to American citizens? Why is it okay for Democrats to import illegal voters, to take over our country and push conservatives out? Why has no one been arrested for using the auto pen to replace the president? Why is it okay for the media to tell any lies they want to steal national elections? And most importantly, why did you promise us a list, the client list, that you now say doesn't even exist? Trump DOJ, we've had it up to here with the, I can't say this word on the air, with the Bravo Sierra, with the bull, the BS, the bull crap. We've had it up to here with the bull crap. We demand answers now. We demand accountability now. We, the people, angrily await your response to our unending queries. No arrests, nothing. No one's been held accountable. And now, the client list that even you told us you had, now suddenly it's gone. It never existed. It was a figment of everyone's imagination. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let me just say one last thing, okay? And again, this is not my point. This is Benny Johnson's point. Another big Trump supporter, MAGA influencer. He makes the point. I don't want to read his post, but this is what he says. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were both charged by the feds for operating a massive sex trafficking ring that involved, in the government's terms, that's the term they use, not mine, not Benny's, thousands of victims. Thousands. Sex trafficking. They were both found guilty in federal court. There's an infamous picture of Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. He's with Virginia Roberts, one of the victims. She was underage. Prince Andrew literally paid Virginia Roberts tens of millions of dollars for her silence. Her story, as he put it, is horrific and well documented. Now she's dead. Now, he goes on to say there are thousands of victims in a convicted sex trafficking ring, and here it comes, and then to say there were no quote-unquote customers when the operation happened right before our very eyes insults our intelligence. So, this is what he says. So what you're saying is they were trafficking women to no one? Question mark? I don't buy it. There are other dark forces at play here, you think? And then he cites a quote from George Orwell, 1984. And it's one of my favorite lines from the entire novel. It is brilliant. It captures the essence of totalitarianism, communism, fascism, Marxism, liberalism today. Listen to this. Quote, this is straight from Orwell. Quote, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino are literally now telling us to reject the evidence of our eyes and our ears, of your eyes and your ears, of my eyes and my ears. Blank off. Blank off. You're a liar, and you're now engaged in a massive, maybe greatest cover-up of the last 50 years. I want Pam Bondi out. I want Kash Patel out. And I want Dan Bongino out. At a bare minimum, I want Pam Bondi out, replace her with Matt Gaetz, or get somebody who's got the guts to do the job, and then order Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Yeah, you're going to do a 180 on this one. Oops, we misspoke. There is a client list. Sorry. And here it is. We're releasing it. At a bare minimum. Agree, disagree. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, we got him back. Let's go to Skippy in South Boston. Thanks for holding, Skippy, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Listen, before I get to the Bondi thing, as far as the poor folks drowning out there in the crazy way, the sick way the left, the Democrats left down on X, it's mind-blowing. But you remember years, I've been calling you for so many years, I've always been referring them to this, the 3D party, and this sums it up. Demented, demonic, degenerates. That says it all. And if you just think of those 3 words, you got them. But in regards to Bondi, Patel, and Bongino, Jeff, I don't think they're going anywhere, because I think they got the blessing from the boss, Donald J. Trump. Put that out. If you recall, back when he was running, I want to get that list, I want to get that beauty son of a gun exposed. Now, after he gets into office, he's inheriting all the lists that the FBI had, that black book. Now we got to look at it. He didn't see it before. I think he's like a guy that called earlier, George. I think George, he's right on the mark. Justice Roberts, as long as a lot of other, as well as others, are compromised. and Trump is actually capitalizing on it. And I think, well, who knows? There might have been Republicans that weren't going to vote for the big, beautiful bill, but they were on that list. Democrats, they might have all gotten calls. And I think there's promises of further votes if you just bury this thing. I predict Justice Roberts is going to probably retire by the fall. And I think that's why what they're doing, Bondi, they're just following orders. They're set for life. Jeff, I don't care if Republicans or Democrats. What these big shots like, they like people to get their mouths shut to get business done. So they will be, if J.D. Vance gets in, Bondi, Pedophile, and Bondi will still have a job. But this is issue. We can't let a MAGA split on this. Because if they split, if we go on a crusade about this issue, it'll split. And then when the midterms come, we lose. So it is an important thing, but I think there's bigger fish to fry here. And no, I think there's a lot of people that are now owing Trump. And you're going to see a wave. And when you see, what's his name, retire, there's going to be an opening to put another conservative on that Supreme Court. I think it's just get beyond this issue because there are bigger fish to fry, Jeff.
Well, Skippy, look, we'll see what happens. You may be right about Justice John Roberts retiring. And who knows, maybe Trump is using this against his enemies. But I just got to be speaking now as an American, as a patriot, as a Christian, as someone who believes in right and wrong and good and evil. You can never protect child rapists. To me, that's unforgivable. That's just, you may think, it's like dancing with the devil. You think you may seduce the devil ends up seducing you. And that's a game you don't want to play. There's nothing more evil, more diabolical, frankly more satanic than molesting and raping underage girls and children. And that's what they did on Epstein Island. And we were promised the client list, and let the chips fall where they may. I'm a big believer in that. We need to purge our country. We have a very, very evil, corrupt elite. And we need to know how evil and how corrupt and how far does it go. Otherwise, they're going to continue to remain in the shadows. I want them out of the shadows, and I want them unmasked and exposed. I want to have good people in our government again. And not just that, but good people in business, good people in our culture, good people in Hollywood. I don't want child sex predators roaming among us. So, think about it. We're mourning these, beautiful, innocent children that have died in the floods or are missing in the floods. But we're going to let people who prey on children effectively get away with this? That's what they're doing. The child rapists are getting away with it. Only because they're powerful and connected. And Skippy, I'm sorry. But for us to succeed as a country, we have to have God's blessing. And I don't know how God can bless a country if we have a pedophile elite. So to me, we have to have transparency, accountability. The list must come out, period, full stop. To me, I'm immovable on this issue. But I hear where you're coming from, and I always respect your call, Skippy. You know that. Skippy, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Anne in Boston. Thanks for holding, Anne, and welcome.
Jeff, you know what? I'm up to my ears with the God stuff. I used to be a Christian. I have become so alienated to everything in this country. Trump has done some good stuff, but I think Trump is the one behind this. The hell with the Epstein list. We've got other things to do in this country. MAGA this and MAGA that. Nothing is being made great again except for rich people and the poor people. The lazy bots are still out there. I don't see them their benefits being taken away for that 80-hour thing. I mean, everybody, all the pretty people on Fox and all you rich people who parade on the radio, it's always God this, God that. I'm lost. I don't have faith anymore, and I am so lost.
Well, Anne, look, I'm not rich. So that's news to me. Believe me, I've given up a lot of money over the years. Not to sacrifice my editorial independence. Look, you and I just differ on the Epstein list. I think when you have pedophiles in the highest positions of power, they need to be exposed and arrested.